I used to think the heart was just a pump. That's what they taught us in biology class. It pushes blood, keeps you alive, and that's it. But when you get older, you start to notice things that science books don't explain. Like, why does your chest tighten? Not when you run. But when you remember someone who's gone. Or when you argue with someone you love. It happened to me. On my 74th birthday. I was alone that year. My daughter hadn't called. My coffee didn't taste right. And for some reason, my chest felt heavy. I thought, is this how a heart attack starts? But it wasn't physical pain. It was emotional. Something deeper. Then a friend sent me a video. A TED Talk. A soft-spoken cardiologist named Dr. Valentin Fuster said something that changed everything I believed. The heart is not just a pump. It's your second brain. That sentence hit me harder than any diagnosis I'd ever received. And it started me on a 30-day journey I'll never forget. After that quiet birthday, I started to notice something inside me had shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It came slowly, like a dimmer switch turning down the light, so gently that I didn't realize I was sitting in the dark. I stopped reading the morning paper. The words no longer meant anything. Coffee didn't taste like comfort anymore, just habit. I quit my morning walks. That bench across the street stayed empty, like it was waiting for someone who had forgotten how to show up. I didn't tell anyone. Not my daughter. Not my doctor. Not even myself. What could I say? I feel less alive. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper, something unnamed. One morning, I sat on the porch watching the trees sway gently in the breeze. Birds were singing. The sky was a perfect blue. Everything outside looked alive. But inside, I was still. Hollow. I realized I hadn't laughed in weeks. Not truly. Not the kind of laugh that rises and surprises you. I wasn't dying. But I wasn't living either. So I did what I had avoided for months. I called the clinic. Told them to run every test. Not because I felt sick, but because I felt distant from myself. They checked everything, heart, blood, lungs. All came back normal. You're doing well for your age, they said. But I didn't feel well. I felt wrong. Then I saw a number. hs-CRP, 4.1. The doctor said it meant inflammation. Your body is quietly on fire. I had no infection. No fever. But the words made sense, because that's exactly how I felt. A slow burn that had been with me for years. I looked it up later. Anything above 3.0, the CDC says, is considered high risk for cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke, or worse. That wasn't just a number. It was a red flag. A whisper from my body that something serious had begun. I walked out of that clinic with no prescription, no advice, just a number. But I left knowing one thing, my heart wasn't broken in a way machines could detect. But it wasn't well. Not even close. For most of my life, I thought I understood what it meant to take care of your heart. Eat less salt. Avoid smoking. Walk every morning. I believed in the numbers. I tracked my blood pressure, my cholesterol, and my weight. If those were in range, I assumed I was fine. And for a while, maybe I was. But as I got older, something shifted. The numbers stayed good, but I didn't feel good. I felt slower. Heavier. Not in my legs or joints, but in my chest, in my breath, in the way I looked at mornings and didn't want to start them. When that hs-CRP result came back, 4.1, it felt like a puzzle piece dropped on the table, but without the box cover to know what I was looking at. I knew inflammation was bad. But I didn't understand what caused it. Or what to do about it. Nobody gave me a plan. Just, monitor it. That word, monitor, has always bothered me. You monitor traffic, not the flame under your floorboards. If something's burning, you don't just watch it. You do something. But I didn't know what. So I did what I've always done when confused. I listened. I searched. Quietly. And one night, I found a name I hadn't heard before. Valentin Fuster. He wasn't young. He wasn't flashy. He didn't have dramatic charts or a TED stage with lights. But he spoke like someone who had seen the insides of not just hearts, but people. He said things I'd never heard from any doctor in my life. He said, the heart doesn't just remember rhythm. It remembers pain. At first, I didn't believe him. I thought, that's poetic, not medical. But then he showed the data. He talked about how cortisol, the hormone we release under stress, acts like a slow acid in the arteries. Over time, it erodes the inner lining. Causes microscopic injury. And that's where inflammation builds. Not from a virus. Not from bacteria. But from unspoken stress. Grief that never got processed. Loneliness that lingered for years. I paused the video and just sat with that idea. I thought about all the times I had told myself, I'm fine, when I wasn't. About the funeral, I left early so I wouldn't cry in front of people. About the apology I never gave. The tension I never released. What if my heart hadn't forgotten those things? What if it had been carrying them, quietly, for decades? That night, I left early from my best friend's funeral. I told everyone it was a work call. But the truth was, I couldn't face my grief. Dr. Fuster referenced a long-term AHA study, over 10,000 older adults tracked across 12 years. The ones with high hs-CRP and elevated cortisol, despite normal ECGs and no plaques, had a 38% higher rate of cardiac events. Not because they had bad habits. But because they had unprocessed lives. That study hit me harder than any diagnosis. Because it wasn't about cholesterol or exercise or kale smoothies. It was about what we hold inside. What we refuse to name. What we try to outwalk, outrun, outlive, only for it to show up in a blood test years later. And here was Dr. Fuster, not offering a prescription, but a reflection. A reminder that the heart isn't just a machine. It's a memory organ. A story keeper. A vessel not just of blood, but of what we never said out loud. He talked about something called heartfulness. A simple practice. 5 minutes a day. No app. No equipment. Just breathing while placing your hand on your chest. Thinking not about goals, but about what your heart needs you to hear. He called it science. I called it grace. That night, I didn't sleep. Not out of fear. But because, for the first time in years, I felt like someone had connected the dots between my emotions and my biology. I copied down everything he said into a notebook. And when I closed it, I realized something. I wasn't broken. I was full. Full of things I hadn't named, hadn't healed, hadn't faced. I went to bed, not with answers, but with a door finally open. And behind that door wasn't a pill bottle. It was something quieter. Something older. Something I had forgotten how to give myself. Permission to feel. And to begin again. The day after I discovered Dr. Fuster's talk, I woke up without the usual weight in my chest. Not because it was gone, but because, for the first time in a long time, I felt I had something I could try. Not a new pill. Not a complicated routine. Just 5 minutes. A quiet promise to myself. I didn't make coffee. I didn't turn on the TV. I just sat by the window where the morning light came in softly. The first sound that caught my attention was the song of a bird, clear, slow, gentle. It wasn't in a rush. It wasn't trying to impress. It just was. Like it knew someone out there needed reminding that life still moves, still sings, even when we feel silent inside. I placed my hand over my chest like he said. And I breathed. 4 seconds in. Hold. 4 seconds out. I didn't think about inflammation. I didn't think about hs-CRP or heart attacks. I just tried to listen to whatever was under my ribs. Not the beating. The feeling. That morning, my thoughts wandered. I remembered my father's funeral. My daughter's last birthday, the one I missed. A conversation with my wife, years ago, that I never finished. They floated in, like dust in sunlight. I didn't try to fix them. I just let them be there. When the 5 minutes ended, I didn't feel any miracles. But I felt something loosen. Just a little. Like a fist unclenching inside me. So I did it again the next day. And the day after. On day 3, I picked up an old notebook and started jotting down how I felt after each session. Not because anyone told me to. Just because it felt honest. One line said, "Less heavy today." Another, "Slept better last night." Another, "Didn't snap when the mail was late." Tiny shifts. Nothing dramatic. But real. I realized I didn't need a breakthrough. I just needed consistency. A way to tell myself, you are here. You are trying. And that counts. So I made a simple tracker. 7 days. 1 page. No pressure. Just a space to show up. I'm sharing it in the video description. Not as a cure. But as a companion. If you're anything like me, you don't need another instruction manual. You just need someone to walk with you. That first week of Heartfulness didn't change my numbers. My hs-CRP didn't drop overnight. But something more important happened. I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't beyond repair. That stillness could be medicine. That breathing could be a form of forgiveness. And when you've spent years holding things in, that's a beginning worth everything. At first, the silence felt heavy. Like sitting with a stranger in a room too quiet. But day by day, it changed. The stillness didn't ask anything of me. It didn't rush or push. It simply waited. And I kept showing up. One breath at a time. Then one morning, something shifted. Not outside, but inside. The light from the window seemed softer. My hands weren't clenched. The knot in my chest didn't feel as tight. I wrote a line in my notebook. Didn't snap at the small things today. The next day, heard the wind through the trees. Then, laughed. For no reason. These weren't milestones. They were whispers. Signs that something in me had started to melt. I realized healing doesn't always come with trumpets. Sometimes, it arrives quietly. In the way you pause before reacting. How do you taste your coffee again? In how you finally notice the sound of your breath. That's when I understood. Heartfulness isn't a technique. It's a homecoming. And that morning, I picked up the phone and called my daughter, no reason, no agenda. Just to hear her voice. Just to feel a connection I'd forgotten I still had. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to say, it helped me. Sitting in silence. Placing a hand over my heart. Giving myself 5 minutes a day to remember I'm still alive, and still capable of change. It didn't take fancy apps or perfect posture. I didn't need incense or mantras. I just needed a chair. A clock. A little courage to sit down and stay. And now, maybe it's your turn. Not because you're broken. Not because you're lost. But because you're here. And if you've listened this far, maybe your heart's been whispering too. So, what if tomorrow morning, before coffee, before news, before the weight of the world slips in, you gave yourself 5 minutes? 5 minutes to breathe. 5 minutes to feel your heartbeat, not for symptoms, but for presence. 5 minutes to sit with whatever's inside you, not to fix it, but to face it. We call it heartfulness. Not because it fixes the world, but because it gives you the strength to face it, with softness. And if you'd like, you won't have to do it alone. We've built a small group. Seniors like me. Folks who've been through things. Who sits, breathes, and gently checks in. One day at a time. There's a tracker you can print. A 30-day challenge. A place to write what you noticed, not what you achieved, but what you heard in the quiet. The link is below the video. You're welcome to join. No expectations. No pressure. Just one breath. One morning. One small act of quiet courage. That's all it takes to begin again. And if you're reading this after age 60, this may be the gentlest medicine you'll ever try. One morning, I walked past the little park near my house. Nothing unusual. Just a few early fallen leaves, a sparrow calling from a rooftop, sunlight drifting through the trees like always. But that morning, everything felt clearer. I stopped by an old tree I've passed 100 times. Not to rest. Just to be still. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel rushed. I wasn't thinking about test results. Or what I'd lost. Or what to fix next. I just breathed. A deep breath, not forced, not counted. A moment, not to fix, but to feel. That's when I realized. Not everything inside us needs to be solved. Some things simply need to be acknowledged. Named. Allowed to stay for a while. Silence, if you're patient enough, will tell you things that noise never will. And sometimes, that alone is enough to begin.